Welcome to the Kuimange Institute, our Institute's Roundtable gathering. I'm Paul Rivera, the Executive Director and President of the Institute, and along with my wife, Laura Lee, the Director of Research, Education, and Outreach. We really want to thank you for joining us today. We have established this forum to provide a platform for open discussion on the various facets of this practice. And we want to have the opportunity to go deeper into the practice of the ritual postures and the benefits it can provide us. We hope to inspire an engaging dialogue on the posture practice, as well as we're tapping into the power of community itself. At the beginning of these discussions, we'd like to introduce a few specific topics or questions to spark the conversation, and we want to allow ample time to encourage your comments, your questions, and your contributions. As we continue to work with this and honoring the original work of Dr. Goodman, the original posture canon, we also continue the path of exploration. And together we have expanded the power and efficacy of this practice itself. And it was last week that after years of connecting via Zoom, we had the opportunity to meet face-to-face with Lawson Malnori, with his recent MA and ethnomusicology from ASU. That is what?
Arizona State University.
Good job. We had a great time exploring a full range of topics and, of course, his research into the role of sound. Sonic driving, the sound induction, as you know, plays a key role in the ritual we use here at the Kuimange Institute. And we know traditional cultures around the world use rhythmic sound percussion instruments, whether it's drumming and rattling and tapping of sticks and dancing and chanting, to draw them into this experience of trance.
Well, it's a pillar of this work as well, this ritual body posture, ecstatic trance induction. Yeah,
exactly. So in this session, we've asked Lawson to share some journeys of his own personal journey and how the power of music, sound, rhythm has guided his path, and how different traditions see music and spirituality as a fundamental part of their daily lives, and finding also this work in our community. And Lawson also said, can I ask a few more questions to get the discussion going? And we said, absolutely. What are you thinking? How do we integrate this work into our daily lives? And how do we share this experience with others in our community at home? So today, we will pass this virtual talking stick around the Zoom circle, listening and sharing with each other, creating an opportunity for greater depth and affirmation from each other's insights, lessons learned, life passages, and challenges. So community, without a question, is central to the human experience. So we want to thank you for taking the time to join us today.
well, I think that going beyond the limits of one's own culture is a quest that each of us are on. That's why we're here. Our culture doesn't really have a place for this kind of work, but it's open to this because we demand it, right? It didn't deliver it. We had to go elsewhere to find it. We had to find our legacy. We had to find that, yes, cultures around the world did this and similar throughout time. Let's reclaim that. And so as we cheer each other on each of our quests, as we open our bandwidth, culturally and spiritually and experientially and in every other way, we can compare notes and we find those universal truths in recounting each other's stories. And those illuminate and they validate our own quest. And so I think that's also one of the purposes of today is just share notes with each other from our own individual journeys to find solidarity, to find shared insights and values.
And over the last 3 years since the beginning of the pandemic, like everyone else, we had to shift, we had to pivot, we had to find a way of continuing the work of the Institute. And how are we going to do that? Because at the time, there was no way in the world we were going to come together in a kiva space or a sacred space and sit in a circle and everybody have a mask on and everybody washing their hands constantly. That wasn't going to work. So we obviously opened it up using technology. And it was a little bit of an experiment. Quite honestly, the work has never been taught in this fashion at this level than what's happened in the last 3 years, making it available. But what clued in was a trance experience that Laura and I had. it was sort of a vision that you have to understand that this work is independent of you and Paul and Laura. The work itself has its own voice. As soon as a person closes their eyes, introduces the rhythmic sound, holds a posture, they're on their journey.
Oh, we
And
always knew that.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
that power of their experience comes from within. And so whether we turn on a computer screen or we're standing in a circle, the power of the work is there. There is something about the element of being in a circle. I have to say there's an element of all of us coming together, which we're going to be doing again coming up in September. But at the same time, we're really pleased with the results and what's been happening and the power of exploration and making this work worldwide availability, is a worldwide opportunity for people to tap into this work and see where this work can take us. Because we've never, even in Dr. Gooden's day, she never had access to this many people and at this kind of volume over time. So over the last 3 years, I haven't added up the numbers, but it's, it's
Far more people
yeah,
that
10,000 whatever
personally,
that would,
engaged
and they
with.
didn't have to all get on
Yeah.
airplanes and fly across the
I
planet.
like the Zoom. I like that everybody's in their own living room,
Yeah,
right?
Okay.
And that we meet. And I like the virtual. I mean, we are truly meeting virtually
right,
the spirits here in this wonderful liminal space.
right.
I think Zoom adapts it quite well
Yeah,
to the experience that we have. But let's hear from Lawson. Let's
Yeah.
introduce Lawson. He's a member of our advisory team. He wrote his thesis around this work. It's going in the archives of our institute. He's been on a Sunday guest several times, speaking about his thesis, his findings, his own theories about sound induction and why it works and its beauty, and how ethnic instruments convey that so brilliantly. And he joins us from Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome, Lawson.
Thank you. I'm really honored to be here and grateful to be part of this community. It's been really fantastic to experience all this past couple of years and get to know you guys and get to know the work, and it just means so much.
Well, I appreciate that you say that you're not able really to talk about a lot of this stuff outside of this community.
Yeah.
So I'm
pushing the boundaries of your professors, making them think differently. That's
that was fun.
Yeah, a little bit.
Good.
So Paul kind of said, Paul said exactly where this is going to lead up to. The question of how do we integrate the work into our daily lives, make it not just something that we do on Saturday mornings or Sunday mornings, but something that's, it's part of who we are and how we manifest ourselves in the world. But I want to give a little background to lead up to that and some context. As they said, I'm an ethnomusicologist, which means I study musical traditions from different parts of the world. And one of the big motivators for me in that research is this experience I had when I was about 21 years old or something. And I was playing an instrument out in this public space. I was busking basically. And a stranger came up and said that they really liked my playing, and they asked if they could borrow the mallets. I was using a xylophone, so it was pretty durable, and I wasn't worried about them breaking. I was like, yeah, please go ahead. And so they played for a little bit and they sang, and it was beautiful. And then they handed me back the mallets, and they said to me these words I'll never forget. They said, They said, I believe music is God here on earth. And in that moment, I knew they weren't talking about, just the Christian God. They're talking about that, what people call God, what other people call Allah, what in Taoism they call the Tao, and what sometimes here they call unbounded universe. They're talking about that. Yeah. And in that moment, when I heard those words, I felt that feeling where you just know that it's true, but you can't rationalize in your head or verbalize what exactly it means. And so from that moment, I tried to figure out what that guy was saying to me, because it felt so powerful in that moment. And along the way, I found some interesting bits and pieces of information from all these different researchers who looked into different traditions. And the one that I'm gonna lead off with is a guy named Anthony Seeger. He is actually a nephew of Pete Seeger, who I believe was in the Weavers and was a folk singer in like the late 50s, 60s, early 70s, and had a very long career. But his nephew became an ethnomusicologist and did some research in Brazil, in the rainforest, with a group of people called the Suya. Here's the book, and there's the name, Suya. And in his book, there's this line that to me is almost just as powerful as what that guy said to me while I was out busking that one day. But I'll lead up to that too. I got a little context. In the world of musicology and ethnomusicology, in the 60s, there was this theme of research where people were trying to figure out what is the difference between speech and song, or music and just talking, or music and just sound. You know, what's the difference? And there was one guy named Feld I'm sorry, no, his name was List was his last name. And he came up with this beautiful chart right here, which basically what it shows is that on this side of things is speech, and here is singing. And the difference, and he's got two scales. And one of the scales is, as far as speech goes, and if you want to see, if anyone wants to see that again, just, I've got it right here, and just let me know. But basically, he distinguishes speech from song by saying that when you're talking, the rhythm, the pacing of the speech is at a natural speech pace, which is kind of redundant. But song, the words and the rhythm of the speaking is manipulated so that it's unnatural. And the more it's manipulated, the more song-like it becomes. And then on the other side of things is the pitch. If you're speaking, the pitch of your voice is pretty much random. And then if you're singing, it's very specific, and it's got these pitches, these frequencies that you're supposed to hit. It's got a scale that's built up. And that's how he distinguished speech and song, or music and just sound. And Anthony Seeger, in his research, found something that didn't really, it kind of fit that scale, but it made the line between speech and song, it made it clear that that's not just a binary thing, that there's not just one and then you flip a switch and it's the other, but it's this gradation. And so when he was with the Suya, he discovered, or he didn't discover, but he learned from them that they had a certain categories of verbal art. And they ranged from simply speaking to people, and the word for that is kaperni. There's kaperni, which is speech, kapernika saga, bad speech, if somebody's jealous.
I'm getting lost, Lawson. I'm getting lost here. I wanted you to talk about how you took a trip to Bali early
We'll
on.
get to that.
Yeah, and how this kind of blew open for you in your personal experience on this. I'm having a hard time following what you were saying, though, about the speech. But can we talk about your personal journey?
Well, I want to just say, I want you to finish what you're saying, because I was enjoying it. I want you to finish
Really?
that
I
and
was
then
getting
come back to your
lost.
journey afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, please do.
Of course. So there, he learned from the folks in the Suya that they had these different categories that range from just normal speech called kaperni to yaren, which is a type of speech where it's still talking, but it's a specific thing where maybe an elder of the community is giving a narrative or a myth that's supposed to be educational to other people in the community. And then there's ngere, which is what he called basically the thing that's most like music, which is the way it was distinguished was very similar to that chart, where it's kind of more melodic, more specific pitches, and more separated as far as the rhythm from what from what a normal speech pattern would be like. And from looking into these, he started to think about how the everyday lives of people in this community were shaped, were inextricably shaped. That's not a real phrase, but I think you know what I mean. You couldn't separate these traditions of verbal art or song, ranging from just speaking to, you know, what sounds to us like singing. You can't separate those distinctions from their everyday lives. It shapes most of their interactions when they're talking to somebody, when they're hearing a story about a myth, or when somebody is giving a prayer or a healing chant or something like that. It's all an innate part of what they do and how their lives are. And when he ended up writing the book about the Suya that he had, in the introduction, there's this line where he says that one of his goals is to, rather than to present that there's a pre-existing, and this is the way he says it. Now I'll say the way that I think about it. Rather than assuming that there is a pre-existing and logically prior social and cultural matrix within which music is performed, this book examines the way that music is part of the very construction and interpretation of social and conceptual relationships and processes.
Wow.
My version of that is that instead of thinking that music is just this extra thing that exists because people had free time or whatever, instead music, and for me, because of this conversation that I had with the guy while I was busking, for me, music and spirituality and religion are all the same thing in my experience. Yeah, and that's my approach to this. So instead of being this extraneous part of society that's just fun, that's just frill, music is a fundamental building block of society, without which society could not exist. And to put it in more Cuyamonga specific terms, this spiritual practice that we go through on Saturdays or Wednesdays or whenever you visit and how often you do it, this practice is not something that we can do because we've got this society built up around us that allows us to have these quiet spaces where in our laptops that we can log into. Right. This practice is what allowed those things to exist. So,
okay, now it's full circle to me. Okay.
Yeah. So my big question is, how do we flip the script as far as, instead of thinking that this is something that we do that's extra, how, and for many of us, this is we're already probably thinking about this way. But instead of this being something extra in our lives, for me, music and this practice, and for other folks, this practice and maybe whatever other types of art or spiritual traditions and practices that you engage with, how do we take those and make them part of who we are and how we present ourselves to the rest of the world every single day, instead of just being, how do we make this part of the very construction and interpretation of social and conceptual relationships and processes, as Sieg said.
Okay, so one of the reasons you chose ethnomusicology as an academic pursuit, intellectual pursuit, was really a couple of your early experiences.
Yeah, can I comment before we go there?
Go ahead.
Before we go to the earlier experiences, I just wanted to digest what you just said, because it's really, really critical to the understanding of the human experience. And that is, just like we talk about when we talk about this work, and we talk about some of the quotes from Dr. Goodman and her research, talking about this idea of having an ordinary reality and having an alternate reality, and that these two worlds together create the pinnacle, the normal state of being for humanity, for a human experience, that it's not an outside element to our experience to have the alternate reality. In fact, the alternate reality should be embraced in all aspects of our life at all times. And so it's the journey of us from the cultures that have been cut off from that reality, from that type of practice, that we're having to rediscover it again, to say it's okay that I'm walking in two worlds at the same time, but I have a foot in this ordinary reality and I have a foot in the alternate reality. Like that, with sound, this power of talking, of speech, and then also that of music, of the rhythm, of these other elements of self-expression. What you're pointing out is that not only, it's not just an other than, it's not just an extraordinary thing to be able to sing or to dance or to have that expression come out, but it's fundamental to who we are. It's ingrained in us. And if we've lost that, get it back.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Beautifully said, Lawson. I wanted to acknowledge that more powerfully before we moved on. And I know I've had the benefit of hearing the journey you went on also. So I want to come back to your question.
I think that it's interesting journey that you opened up to other cultures and how they used music.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if those early experiences then set the stage for you to then try to figure it out. Could you just recount that journey a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I might even play a little bit of music through my phone so you can hear some examples. When I was a young lad, starting off in my musical journey. I was just one of the guys with one of the middle school kids with a little xylophone bell kit and a fake leather practice pad, annoying the heck out of my parents and my brother when I would come home and practice me. Ding, 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 ding. It was terrible. But after a couple years, I met through a camp a couple of folks who were professors at SMU in Dallas, which was my undergrad, and they all had this band where they got together and played music from different places from around the world where they'd visited and gotten to study, and they recorded some albums. And I listened to that music as a kid all the time because it was just so special and weird. I heard it with my ears and I didn't know why, but I loved it and I wanted more of it and I wanted to learn about it and I wanted to be able to play it. And so when I got to college, I ended up going to the same school where they taught. And one of the professors who was in that group hosted every year, and he still does now. I think he's there right now. He hosts a study abroad trip to Bali in Indonesia. And that was one of the places and one of the traditions where they got a lot of the instruments and the styles that they played in their band from, because they'd all been to Bali at least a couple of times and studied music there. And I went on the study abroad trip, and it was just life changing just to be there and just to hear the music in person, actually see the instruments and see the people playing it. It was so much different when it's in context instead of just coming through earbuds from a recording studio.
Right.
For me, one of the things that I noticed is that I never saw a performance in Bali. I've been there. I went there 3 times. I've never seen a performance indoors. It's always, maybe there's like a shade structure, a little roof, not a pagoda, but like a ramada, maybe, that's built over the stage. But
Right.
it's always open air, and you can hear the traffic, and you can hear animals, and you can hear people talking, and all of this activity going on around the music, and not just the sound itself. And that just adds a whole extra layer to it, just sonically. But
Right.
you can even think
Life
about
and play.
meaning
Yeah.
Yeah.
what that is as well. But on that first trip that I took, one day we went to a smaller island. We had to take a ferry to get there, and it was kind of off the coast of Bali, and maybe a half-hour ferry ride. And I woke up the next morning on that island, and everybody else in the group was asleep. But I heard this music that sounded exactly like this song that I knew from my professor's group. And I'm going to play it here, and I hope that it sounds okay coming through the speakers. It's pretty cool. And I thought that somebody that morning, I heard that, and I thought I assumed somebody else in the group was awake, and that they knew about this album that my professors had recorded, and they happened to be playing that song. And so I started wandering around the place where we were staying, looking for the source of this music. And eventually I got to the edge of kind of the compound, and there was a wall, and on the other side of it was a beach and these huts where people who farmed seaweed, they collected seaweed from the ocean. They would go grab it and they'd process it in these huts. And so I figured, well, what's going on? But I went outside the gate, and I realized the sound was coming from one of these huts. So I kept going, and then I saw a guy there playing this exact same song on a homemade rindik, is what it's called. It's a bamboo xylophone.
Yeah.
He just had his own that he made there, and he was playing the exact same song. And this is him.
Playing just because, just for the joy of it, just celebrating.
Exactly. He was sitting there playing this while his wife was, I think she was working on laundry or maybe she was processing some seaweed. I don't remember that part. But she was sitting there working on something, and he's sitting there playing his xylophone, and they're just having this time together. And it was one of the most, well, you guys call it synchronicities. It was one of the most synchronicitous moments of my entire life, where I felt right then and there that I knew that I was in the right place doing the right thing, and that I needed to keep following it, because it's not just a coincidence that one of the songs that my professors had recorded that I loved the most of all of the stuff that they had put out on their CDs was being played at that exact moment on that exact island on that exact beach, right next to where I was when I woke up.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow. That reminds me, who's the gal that did The Lion King and did the costumes, the first play?
Oh,
She has this beautiful quote. I really follow her work. I just love her work. And she's
Cha-Cha Higby. Cha-Cha
no.
Higby.
No, it's the one that designed the costumes for the first Lion King. And yeah, she's famous. So she talks about, I was listening to an interview with her, and she talks about being in Bali, and she's a theater producer, right? She produces productions and theater and costume. She did all the costumes, and she's wandering around and under the full moon, and she hears some music going on, some voices, and she peeks through the glade, and there she describes this full-on beautiful production, costumes, the god. She couldn't understand the language, but this full production in the middle of this forest. She's looking around going, who's the audience? Who's the audience? And then she realizes it's a ritual. The audience are the gods. This whole production, Julie Taymor, thank you. Julie Taymor, this whole production is for the benefit of the gods.
Mm.
And I just thought that was so beautiful. That are we not putting on a lot of pageantry? This ritual that we do is really for the spirits, to knock on their door, to say, we're here, let us in,
Right.
let's commune.
Right.
Let's go to this virtual meeting place, which is the alternate reality. We show up.
Right.
We are dressed. My father would never let us meet with him unless we were dressed nicely, fingernails clean. He would check them, hair's combed, show me respect. I'll meet with you, but you must show me respect, and you must show up
Set an appointment, come on
at
time.
your best,
Yeah.
full,
Yeah.
ready for a meeting.
Yeah.
And it's similar to that, it's a show of respect.
Yeah.
And to say, I celebrate the heavens, I celebrate life, I celebrate the universe.
Mm.
And here I am communing with you. Let's celebrate together.
Well said.
I thought, oh my God, that's where my mind was blown.
Yeah.
That's where I'm like, oh, other cultures have something that we've lost.
I also want
How do we gain it back? It is a universal code that we exchange with the beyond, with that force that's bigger than ourselves.
right. Yeah. Well said.
Oh,
And I just thought, wow. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that story, Lawson.
Yeah, can
And
I bookend it
appreciate
really
that
quick?
you
Yeah, go ahead.
went on an intellectual journey to better understand it and decode it,
Right.
to find
Go
out
ahead,
what are
jump
those
in.
elements. Yeah.
So, thank you. But the most recent, I guess, moment in this journey for me has been that as Laura and Paul are already aware, and some of you might have heard before we started, I just moved to a new place in Phoenix this week, and it was an exhausting process. It took me 4 days, and I left the old place with the last bit of my stuff at like 9:30 p.m. the day before I had to be out of there by the lease. And back-breaking kind of, it was exhausting, and it was also emotionally stressful because I'd lived in that place for 2 years, and at my age, 2 years is still kind of, I don't mean it to sound like that.
That's okay.
At my age, 2 years is still kind of a long time. And I had a lot of memories at that place, and I hadn't had the chance to really take it in that
Yeah.
I was leaving, because it was just rush, those 4 days, movers and moving things and getting stuff installed in the new apartment. But when I finally had loaded up the very last of my stuff in my car, I had left my acoustic guitar at my old apartment throughout the whole process. And I went back into the empty apartment and I sat down.
Mm.
And when I was a kid, my mother had not assigned, but my brother and I each got a song from her that was like, it was our song. And his song was "You Are My Sunshine," which is a
Mhm.
classic. Mine was "Amazing Grace," and that song has always held a lot of special meaning to me. And and so I sat down with my guitar and I just looked around at the empty place, and I played "Amazing Grace," specifically because, like you were talking about in these other traditions, you can put on a performance and it's not for an audience, but it's for yourself, it's for the universe, it's for God. And for me, that's what I was doing. I was saying thank you to the apartment, to that space that had kept me safe for 2 years. I was saying thank you to God and to the universe for allowing me to have those experiences there and giving me the opportunity to move to this new place. And in the middle of playing the song, I just broke down crying.
Right.
Not because of just sadness, but because of this rush of emotion. And it was one of the most cleansing things I'd felt in a really, really long time. And it was amazing. And I was very grateful to have learned that, music is and spirituality is more than just some extra thing, but it's this thing that's fundamental to who you are. And if you really put it into practice, it can make your life so much more meaningful.
Beautifully said. I wanted to also, first of all, I just happened to notice Janet said she likes to smudge using the vibration of sound rather than smoke. And we do that a lot at the Institute, where we use drumming as a means of smudging and a purification, which ties into what you're sharing. I also wanted to hit the rewind button for something else you just shared. And that was, you said that in these cultures, the running of the cars coming by, the dogs are barking, there's noise, and the community surrounds you, life surrounds you while the music is happening. And it reminds me of about, I won't say how many years ago, probably 25 years ago, we had the great privilege of spending time with Ipu Piara, who was from the Uriwawa tribe from the Amazon. He was recognized as the shaman of his tribe, and he also was an anthropologist who taught at it doesn't matter, but he's some university of what it doesn't matter. So, but he always said, we were having, he would perform ritual, and there always would be someone that says, well, I was disturbed by something, whatever. And he goes, you don't understand. That is such a Western misunderstanding.
That
ritual.
Sacred ritual can only happen in this little contained building.
He says the grandmothers come to the dining room table.
That's where.
He says the grandmothers come to the dining room table. The grandkids are pulling on her apron. The dogs are barking, and they're performing their ritual in the morning. They're starting their day doing their ritual. That this is not an either or experience. And so I really was tuned in that you brought that up again. I love that idea of that sometimes in the Western religious training that we've had, that in order for it to be sacred, it has to be perfectly silent. And at the same time, humanity surrounds us. Maybe that's even more sacred when we can transcend with all of that around us and be a part of it.
Open up our backyard to the whole cosmos as our sacred space. But I also want to say, I want to give Marie Kondo a credit with her book about even tidying up. When we tidy up our life, what is that animism that she's really promoting for such a Western audience, and the Western audience grabbed onto it. And now she's so popular. Why? Because she's doing exactly as you described, leaving your apartment or leaving your possessions or clear up your life or just move on, right? And it's that all of life is sacred. Everything has some form of consciousness. And when we come with gratitude and honor to thank it for being a part of our life. So here, you're no longer sparking joy in my life would be what she says to an object or a book or whatever you're letting go of. But thank you. Thank you for being part of my life. And I hope you find your next right space. And I'm going to put you in the stream of maybe somebody else can use this down the road. But thank you. I honor you. But to show up with gratitude and respect to everything around us, I just want to say that has been the lesson for me, to show up for the spirits. To say, I respect you, whether it's my dreams, whether you're going to come to me in my dreams, and I respect that by journaling it or paying attention, or I ask for an open door. I'm going to come with an open heart and respect and ritual. And come to at my best, or whatever it is. I just think that we know that to be true, though our society doesn't promote it. And we have this one night stand with our resources and we throw them away willy-nilly. We know better. And
Yeah.
when it's presented to us, something rings in our heart and we
Right.
respond. And I just think, I think that's interesting how we find some of these universal truths that we know in our soul,
Right.
in our culture, and we respond to it.
Well-
So I appreciate that you find Lawson and you're here to declare music is God here on earth, and that we can open these doors to bring spirit
Beautifully said,
here
yeah.
on earth and in our lives and to activate it.
Mhm.
And I thank Felicitas Goodman for doing that and showing us a path forward, and everybody who's doing it in our path.
I just go ahead and I'm going to open up the
Please,
discussion because
yeah.
this is a roundtable, even
So
though
you kicked
I love
off,
having you
Lawson.
to
Thank
myself,
you.
Lawson. We could talk for hours, but
Yeah.
let's go ahead and open it up and people can raise their hands and start asking questions. I know that Kelly said she had a quick comment on the topic herself. Who is her?
And I want to hear from,
Oh, there she is.
from,
Hey, Kelly, turn on your mic.
yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This has been so great so far. When I was sitting there listening to you at first, I was kind of in my process of unraveling the morning, and
Yeah.
I wasn't like fully listening yet, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And once I really did start listening to you, I was just so touched because everything that you said, like I feel this way about all communication, that they were trying to, ancient people knew how to communicate. They were trying to communicate any way that they could, whether it be through the stones, whether it be through the sound, and they were trying to connect with themselves and have, like Felicitas said, like have one foot in both worlds. It's like sometimes I feel like science is telling us to listen to the sound, and then we can do both. And if you can have your one foot in the science and one foot in your spiritualness. And when you started talking over the music, then I was like really listening. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I get
So you're demonstrating the power of
Like
music.
the
to
sound
draw
went
you
with,
in,
like it
tune
was,
you up.
I was able to concentrate on what you were saying and like really take it in,
Yeah.
not just listen to it like I was going to write it in my notebook, but I did write it in my
Thank-
notebook. So
Thank you. And Lawson, I would like to hear more about what you were talking about with Pete Seeger, Anthony Seeger's book and all of this, but I would like to hear the sound. If you're going to describe how a different culture uses the sound, we
Mhm.
should have, so come back on a Sunday when we can really,
Or go
because that's our
deeper.
intellectual period, right?
Yeah, yeah.
To
No,
discover
but he has triggered
other
some,
traditions.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to hear more, but I want to hear it with the sound and where you can take your time and spend 2 hours, laying it out, and we can react to that.
Yeah.
So let's have that invitation
Thank
sent
you.
to you.
Kelly,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Kelly.
No, that was it for now.
all right. When Kelly
All
brings
right.
up a good point, she said that once you had the music playing and then you spoke over the music,
Mhm.
she could listen.
I could too.
Having the
yeah.
music in the background is sort of like that old Pentecostal thing of the music being in the background and the preacher talking, and all of a sudden we all get
Yeah.
drawn into something. And which was Dr. Goodman's inspiration for a lot of the work that she discovered. Anyway,
Like
right
we
on.
have an internal meter here, and we can respond, when it's, yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Well, I want to open up and
Mm.
please raise your hand. You know how to use Zoom by now. You just go down to the reactions button and raise your hand. But I do want to go around the table.
I want to hear from Janet about using sound as a smudge.
Okay.
You have done that with drums. When we can't use smudge, Paul will go around with a small, you
Yeah.
have a
I have it right here.
tambourine. Yeah, go get it.
I built it.
Yeah, just for this purpose. Anyway,
Okay, Janet, we're going to put you on.
yeah. Hey, Janet.
Yeah, there's so many different ways. Like to think about what smoke does, it starts here on earth and it rises to the heavens. Well,
Yeah.
vibration does the same thing. So we're able to work with it and basically send it up into the heavens. So there's that communication of heaven and earth, as it were. And if you notice, I want to say all, but I haven't studied every name of God, but all the names of God in ancient are power syllables.
Hmm.
So as Lawson mentioned,
All the names of the gods
Allah,
in ancient cultures are power syllables.
yes, like
How do you mean
Allah,
Allah.
Allah, same
Or
similar to
amen. Yeah.
Allah, Buddha, Yahweh. So it's all these are all power syllables that, and I have a personal philosophy, which we don't need to spend too much time on, but that that's how they came up with names that we use, because this is how they were communicating. This is how they were expressing and experiencing the divine.
Because of the long vowel, then you're kind of in effect toning.
Yes.
Om or ah or whatever. You're vibrating,
I mean,
right?
even
A
the name of,
consonant is a hard sound, but the vowels are these long tonings.
even the name
So
of
the
Jesus in
vibrational-
Aramaic is Yeshua.
Ah.
Yeshua.
Interesting. Wow.
Well, and this
Janice,
is
our guest, comes Sunday, so you will dissect this
next week,
further
we're
for
going to be
us.
going deep into this. So that's going to
Oh
be
yeah, this will be
fantastic.
fun.
Um,
Thank you for that. Do you want to see Paul's
yeah, tell me if you can hear it.
smudge drum?
I don't know if you can hear the drum in the mic.
But Paul found something similar to smudge us. You can actually feel the vibration hit you, and it kind of like it's a cleansing of one's aura, right? So
Yes.
it's very effective. Yeah.
Okay.
You feel it on you. You feel that you are resonating with the drum, and it's shifting your gears
Yeah.
to prepare you to enter
Good work,
into.
Janet.
Yeah.
Next week, everybody should be there. Don't
Yeah,
miss out on
it's gonna
Janet's
be fun.
discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Or mahalo is like, which Hawaiian is a very power vowel sensitive
Yes.
language. So
Yeah. That,
Yeah.
that makes Lelania happy because she says it every day. Mahalo.
They're in Maui.
Yeah.
So
Aloha. Ha.
Aloha.
aloha,
is-
absolutely. And
yeah,
aloha,
ha.
shalom, salam, all come from the same root.
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Wow.
heard that aloha ha is sacred breath, but I've also heard that like, ma, yeah, is the tone of the heart. So you guys probably know better than me. So yeah.
Yeah.
Makes
Thank
sense.
you.
You
Thank
know.
you all.
Lawson, do you want to comment on this? I'm sure you have something to say.
I don't really know anything about this.
Aw.
I think it's really cool.
This is Janet's research next week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, thank you. And Lelaine, did you have any questions or comments about the discussion so far, since I've already put you on screen?
Additions to this.
Well, my friend is currently in Bali, and I went back and pulled out my old memory journal from Bali, and just the great memories of the music and how ritual is just so part of every day. I mean, it was a while ago that I was there, but just the little offerings and just it's just how spirituality and music are just so part of their everyday experience is so beautiful and inspiring. So thank you for Lawson and Janet.
I think theater is just one of those arts like music, like poetry, like song, like dance, this gesture, the costume. Did you all? I did this as a kid. We had this big, beautiful staircase in the home, and that would be our stage. And I get my sisters together and dress them up, and then we'd do this procession, for the parents, and we just wanted ceremony in our lives. We just wanted to like enter into some other state. But I think it's just there in us, isn't it? To be expressed. It's just one of our key, like I just think whales make music, the humpback whales. They have singers among the pods, and birds sing, birds do ritual, birds dance to one another. We call it a mating dance, but I think they too, with their beautiful feathers, just like costume and ceremony. Or you have some crows that will pick up shiny objects and then lay them in their bower in a beautiful way. I mean, it's there instinctual in us, right? And other species, the bees dance to show where I just think it's just so much a part of us. And why? What are we celebrating? Just and communicating.
Yeah.
It's just so cool.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to keep moving on to get more. Now, listen, we're going to go around the circle, so don't be shy. Let's get some comments included. Lee, is this Lee the drummer? I don't know which Lee it is. I want to ask Lee.
Oh, do we have a
if
drummer?
it's well, Lee the drummer has
Yes.
traveled the world as a musician. He would have a comment for sure. Let me see. Hi, Lee.
Are you referring to me?
Oh no, I got the wrong Lee. Okay.
No, she's not the wrong Lee.
Well,
She's
I did with the Lee that I reckon.
another Lee.
I made a mistake.
Hello.
She's not the drummer. She's Lee from Canada.
She's an artist.
Yes. So Lee, do you want to make a comment about what we've talked about so far?
Well, I would love to see that chart again. I did miss it.
Oh, God, I'm sorry. Now I interrupted you, lost them. Forgive
It's
me.
okay. He's got it.
Explain it. What are we looking at?
Let me turn everything off and just have you alone by yourself for a minute. And
So we
you
can see the chart.
okay, now do it.
Oh, okay. So basically, I'll read the labels here. And now I'm using a Balinese flute that I should bring over. This says Sprechstimme right here, which is a musical term for something that shows up a lot in opera, where instead of or whatever, they're like doing this really creepy, rapid talking. It's random pitches and random pacing of the syllables. And over here is monotone. So he's contrasting those two really for the pitch structure, because if something's monotone, it's exactly one frequency, one pitch, just perfectly constant. And in the Sprechstimme, it's just kind of all over the place. And this is kind of the middle point right here, where he's got in the middle of the two would be kind of a normal song or melody, where it's got a clear scalar structure. Like there are notes that you're supposed to hit, frequencies that it's got that much structure to it. So it's not just completely random, but it's also, it's got variability. So it's not just monotone. So this would be like what most of us would probably consider normal music, right here in the middle, where it's got specific pitches, but it moves around between them. And so this is the pitch side of the scale, where this is rhythm. And the way that he distinguishes the rhythm part is that here it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it was the 60s, so it's kind of groundbreaking. So speech is here. It's just normal speech, whatever rhythmic pacing you would have when you're just talking to somebody. And here is the opposite of that. Is the far end of that is he calls it song, and it's where you've manipulated the rhythm of the words so much that if you didn't have the actual words themselves, it would be completely unrecognizable, like what you're trying to say. So in a hypothetical world where there's a language that is like fundamentally based on rhythm, at least as much as it is on the syllables or the phonemes that you're using, in that language, nobody would know what you're saying. And sometimes even when they're singing in English, we don't know what they're saying. So it kind of makes sense. And then right there in the middle, between those 2 points would be something maybe like public speaking, where I'm not just casually talking to my buddies and we're just like, whatever, but I'm talking slightly more clearly than I usually would. And so the pacing is different from my normal speech, but it's not quite singing, where the rhythm is the rhythm of the words is catered specifically to the music. A word like rhythm, I would say it that way, but you could sing it rhythm if you wanted to in the song, and it was still the same word, but it's so dramatically different for artistic or creative purposes or whatever. So his chart is basically, you've got the pitch ranging from completely random frequencies to, in the middle, a clear scale of notes to monotone. And then he's got speech to kind of in the middle here is, public speaking or something like that. And then to actual singing, where the rhythm is unrecognizable compared to what it normally would be in everyday speech.
Where would glossolalia and where would the steady, fast, monotone beat of our rattle show up on this chart? Where would the utterance of glossolalia show up? Where would a fast monotone beat? Because you're combining music, rhythm, speech, song. Yeah, song. What?
The monotone beat would go here. There's no pitch to it. Actually, the monotone beat would be exactly right here, because it's, like you said, it's monotone. So pitch wise, it's the same every time. Mm-hmm. And then it's not rapid and quick and random, so it's been manipulated to a certain extent, but it's also not actually, you know what, it might go here. It might be so, because it's hard because this is specifically about song and speech, and a rattle doesn't usually talk. But if we think about it like a talking drum, like they have in Nigeria, where you can literally speak the language through the drum in certain cases, if you got the right context by playing the right pitch and the right rhythm. If you manipulated the language in that drum to the point where it's perfectly steady beats, it would be completely unrecognizable from the speech. So it would probably end up down here. And we already said monotone. So the rattle is probably right here. The rattle or the drum that gets played during the ritual is probably right about here, where it's perfectly monotone and completely unrecognizable, so manipulated from natural rhythms that it's just, it's just a perfectly steady beat that's completely unnatural in a certain sense. And then glossolalia, I've only seen that in real life once, and it was at this modern urban megachurch in Dallas.
Mhm.
And if I remember correctly what it sounded like, I'd say that where am I? The melody was definitely not monotone, but there wasn't a clear scale. So I think, but it also wasn't super random. So I'd say that pitch wise, it's about here. Rhythm wise, probably here.
So let me ask you this. So as one who's experienced this ritual body ecstatic trance state with its inductive music, sonic driving, and as one who's looking at this chart and studying this, would you posit that we have this natural wider vocabulary to engage that we naturally go to, that there's no accident that a fast monotone beat does this, or that, as Goodman would describe glossolalia, or speaking in tongues, because she studied this as well, that when trance temporarily overtakes the speech centers, glossolalia, or where you are in this chart, would naturally be your response, because in effect, you're talking to spirit, you're talking to the Holy Spirit, or this is an utterance. I mean, do you see any correlation between how music is used, how humans use music, how our physiology, our psychoacoustics is built, where this would be natural? And if you go back early in time, how are we constructed? Before we had a developed complex language, we were uttering, we were gesturing. Anthropologists suggest that sign language was used even before words, right? Sign language, body language, utterances. I mean, look at how animals do this as well. They're signing and they're uttering to each other in different pitches. Do you see anything like that? And then I pose those two questions that you had in the beginning again.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's a specific reason that a monotone and perfectly steady beat would cause this. I think that glossolalia being here, it's just it's like a middle ground of randomness. It's a slightly random rhythm and a slightly random melody, but not to one extreme or the other. And then and it's just generally unstructured. So it's kind of like a natural chanting thing, and like it's not specifically a chant, because there is chant on this chart, and that's not where it was. But it's just kind of a natural thing that would happen, and when you just let loose a little bit, it's
you better read Goodman. You
enough.
better read Goodman and how she defined what true glossolalia is, that it has a specific cadence. She also has the insight. I mean, this was a key insight for her breakthrough back in the 60s. She was saying that when she witnessed a preacher standing in the front of a church where this was expected, where this was okay and honored, that it was the specific sound of the preacher doing this in slow, steady beats of his intonation, and that it was the clapping of the community, and that it was the expectation, the safe setting that people, not all the time, a lot of people, she said, faked it, but when she saw real glossolalia, it was a trance state.
Yeah.
That would be something for your next
Well,
study. Fascinating. I think if Chris Van Poel is here and wants to speak on this, this is interesting.
yeah.
Because I think,
I would just say one more thing is it's
Okay.
that going back to the book, it's not that there's like a one thing or the other. You know, there's not just like on or off between. I'm showing
Yeah.
the book. The
That's
book that I mentioned at the beginning. It's not like you can only achieve this with the monotone steady beat. That's one of the ways that people do it.
Right.
But the different ways of speaking and presenting, like in the book, and we even have them in our own tradition. Somebody goes up on a stage and they speak with a certain rhythmic pattern to do Shakespeare. As different from what they would to
that's
do
why
a
he
different
wrote an
play.
iambic pentameter. Yeah.
Exactly, but they have different effects, but it's
Yeah.
still an effect. It's still entering you into a certain level of an altered state of consciousness where you have a certain type of spiritual, mystical experience. But there's a lot of ways to go there, and humans use this
Yeah.
entire range in both directions
Exactly.
every single day. But I think that people just don't really appreciate
Okay.
what they're doing and what they're getting out of it.
Yeah.
A
We
lot.
naturally find our way there without intellectualizing it and charting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were the two questions
Well,
that
let
you
me
posed?
come back to those
Yeah.
two questions.
Yeah.
And then what I'm going to do is go back to the tradition now, Lawson. I want to do the
Thank you
last
for those
part,
insights, Lawson.
the last part of our
Yeah.
day here, using your questions as a means for us to do the roundtable. And what we do is one person starts, and then they say, I want to pass the talking. They look at the participant list. They say, I'm going to pass the talking stick to Linda. And Linda says, I'm going to pass the talking stick to Lelania. And like that, we just go around that way. We're not determining who speaks. Each of you just has an energy of who it should go to next. So let me ask you two questions first, Lawson, that you asked, because I think
Let
they're
him
both
ask him.
okay. How do we integrate, and how, just to remind him, how to integrate and how do we
His
share?
questions.
So
Yeah.
what are your two questions, Lawson? Laura's asking me to have you
That
ask.
you would like to hear from this community.
Well, I think that it's an important thing to consider, and the questions are how do we I don't remember what the second one was. First one was how do we take what we learn in this practice and take this experience and take the people that we become through this practice and make them part of our daily lives. So that we're walking in both places at once, so that we're integrated, so that whatever we learn, whatever lessons we get from the experience, we carry out and we actually live them out every day in our interactions with other people.
Mhm.
And that's a big question for me, because the real world out there is the real world versus the alternate reality is so different from the world that it was when these traditions first built up, and in places where these traditions or similar traditions are kind of still
Still
active.
maintained.
So it seems like it's almost more challenging, or maybe it's just not.
Yeah.
But the question is, how do we integrate the people who we are when we come here with the people who we are when we're at Target
Yeah.
or when we're at Walmart or at the gas station or on the
Yeah.
highway?
Yeah. Perfect.
Or in
Yeah.
class.
So that's a combination of both your questions. You had asked originally was, how do we integrate this work with our daily lives, and how do we share this experience with others in our communities at home? How can, and yeah,
Mhm.
that's a wonderful question. How do we,
How do you answer that? Lawson?
you
Let's
first,
start
yeah,
with
you first.
Me first. Well, I do music as my life, because those experiences that I talked about early on, they taught me, from learning about the traditions and the way that music is integrated into daily life as a spiritual thing in a lot of other places. Learning about that, I looked back on my own life and I realized that music was something that I wanted to do, and that through sharing music, I can help people's lives become more full.
Yeah.
And so music is everything that I do. I do this research. I did this master's degree full time for a couple of years, and now I still do it, even though I got a different full time job. And I play music, and I make music, and I write music, and I work at the symphony here in Phoenix, where I work my tail off sometimes to make it possible for people to come in and appreciate music on this grand stage, where it is kind of a spectacular ritual that is, it's not just listening to music at the gym or in the car while you're doing homework, but you come in and you
It's
sit down
an
and you
event.
listen to music as the purpose. And I hope that eventually I can help people who are in this organization and similar ones understand that what they're doing is not just a job, but that it's a spiritual thing. Even if they're not religious people, it's something that's got this meaning, and that they're not just performing, for a paycheck, but they're performing to give people's lives this meaning and this foundation upon which they can go out and live everything
And
else.
why are you here in this community? What does this practice offer you as well for this
Well,
same quest?
this is for me. This is what I've found. Let me start that over. This is the first community that I found in the U.S. that tries to achieve that sees that normal people living every day can connect with their spirituality just on their own and make it a meaningful part of their lives, and not just something that's this is, you guys have this tangible spirituality, I guess, that I saw in Bali and in Cuba when I went there once, and in other places. It's so much more real here than it was in growing up in a Methodist church in the suburbs in Texas. People went there and they meant it, but they didn't feel it, or at least I didn't feel it as much as I wanted to, and as much as I saw other people feeling it when I went to Bali. And I wanted that in my life, and I find it here.
I think I'm here to listen to the music of the spheres.
Yeah.
I want to lend an ear to that. Yeah, if I'm going to relate this to music. And Paul, and then let's go to our.
Well, I'm going to go
Yeah.
ahead and go and get, because of the
Yeah.
timeline, I want to have some other voices in the conversation.
Thank you, Lawson.
So Carolyn, would you like to share answering that question about how do we integrate this into our daily lives, and how can we share these experiences with our communities at home?
Sure, I would like to share. I just want to say that every time I hear Lawson talk, I tear up. He's so genuine, and I can feel the connection that he has. And so he just spoke, and I'm a little teary, so forgive me. But I just want to say that, growing up when I was really little, all I wanted to do was listen to music. And my mother had like play clothes for us to play, try on and put on plays and stuff. And like the year ago, I started getting into a really funk, mental funk. And I was gifted an angel reading. And my mother came through and she chastised me. Why don't you listen to music anymore? You don't play your music. You always loved music. Why aren't you listening to music? And, that really struck a chord. And so after that, I said, yeah, that's so true. Music helps you so much. I love concerts, and the beauty of going to a concert, everybody's together, just like when we do posture work, everybody's feeling it. Everybody's there for the music, so happy and, connected. So I do agree that music is very, very important. And I love, and, every time I listen to Lawson, I get a little tidbit about myself. It's really bizarre. When I listened to his first presentation with CI, he talked about when Felicitas recognized that the property in New Mexico would be hers. And I am big on synchronicity. And when he said that, it struck a chord with me. When I was 5 or 6, I experienced something, and I knew that was the time that she did that. I felt that vibration from her, seeing that. And so I've been connected. I feel like now I really feel like I've been connected with Felicitas and CI for most of my life. And I've been connected to spirits and everything, spirit world. But to the question, how I bring it into my daily life, it is part of my daily life anyway. But since doing posture work, beginning posture work, and really feeling that the spirits are there for us as well as we should be there for them,
Yeah.
we are all connected through time and space. And I feel that with this posture work.
Mm.
So when things start happening in the real world, just for instance, yesterday, I did a posture before I went to the beach, and I hung out at the beach with a dear friend of mine, but who can be a little challenging at times. And every time I started feeling a little anxious about what she was saying, or I just went back to that posture and how I felt in that posture yesterday. It was very healing for me. So things like that. It's every day, all the time, with my family. I'm just a lot calmer since starting posture work, and because I know that we are all connected through space and time.
Yeah.
Because of the posture work.
Beautiful. Thank you,
Yeah.
Carolyn.
Choose somebody to pass the talking stick to.
Oh, okay. I will choose Lee.
Okay, Lee, you're up.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you. Well, a word that keeps coming up for me is demystifying. I keep thinking about, this modern world, and I just, in my body, I don't know if it's like a collective aversion or resistance that I feel to the word spirit and spirituality.
Right.
And just wondering if that's not a personal view, but it's something I kind of feel and see in the collective, because this separation did occur at some point in our history between spirit and matter. So I've been playing with this word, and I feel like we need a new word or a new way to describe spirituality so that it will resonate and will open the door to the mainstream, that it'll be at a level that they can be like, oh, okay, I can engage with this.
Yes.
So I don't know what that word is. I wrote down something greater than us, that's neutral. I guess I'm searching for neutrality.
Yes.
Neutrality around this topic. How can, and what really struck me by Lawson's presentation today, I have a lot of wounding around music and around singing. My first language is Polish, so I entered the English speaking education system as only a Polish speaker without any ability to speak English whatsoever. And public school did not make sense to me, singing about Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall. I'm like, what the fuck does it have to do with my life? Who is Humpty Dumpty? What's this wall all about? Most of the time I couldn't even sing. It was like these words that, it was like looking at Chinese, writing, like, what is this? And my mom didn't sing in Polish at home. So I was like, what is music? What's singing? It was so foreign. And wow, to have, so the thing that comes for me is this phrase that I came up with, putting the science back into music, putting the science back into singing, that for someone like me, perhaps that's more left brain, to be like, oh, wow, because the way music is taught to us as music teachers think, oh, I'm just going to have people sing this little thing, Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall. And I'm like, what? Like, what does this have to do with anything? And to see Lawson like kind of put this chart together, if there's these different ways of manipulating rhythm and giving, I think giving examples, I think having a documentary or a real film that explains the science of music and gives lots of examples, so people see, oh, that's what music is and that's what it does. I don't know, that's one answer that I get. to answer these questions. And another answer that came to me, somebody asked, Lawson asked, how do we take what we experience in this creative process back into our normal lives? And I'm not in Canada right now. I've been living in Peru for the last 8 or 9 months.
Oh, wow.
In the Amazon, working with the plant medicines here, a whole variety of different plant medicines, everything from psychedelic to non-psychedelic, and really asking myself, and of course I'm an expressive arts therapist, so I come from the model of intermodal arts, and that has a very unique model and a very unique way of looking at the creative process that's actually different from the typical or standard art therapy. There's actually different types of art therapies that exist in the world, and the one I work with is intermodal, which is unique. And intermodal art therapy, it tries to chart the process of when we enter the liminal space and what happens there. How do we assist people to enter the liminal space? And how do we assist them to stay in the liminal space for as long as possible? And how do we help them to exit the liminal space? And then most importantly, how do we help them to harvest what occurred in the liminal space? So it's kind of like planting a garden. You grow your carrots, and at the end of the season, you harvest them. And of course, then you bring them into your physical body and your life. And so I definitely want to spend more time. It's kind of really kind of lit a light up in me. And I feel like I need to put something together and then bring it back to the Cuyamungu community, because the intermodal community has language that can help express this process kind of in these understandable, kind of more mainstream terms. And so I'm very excited.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And I think that's maybe the missing piece is the harvesting at the end of a session, of a creative session. And what I can quickly say as an expressive artist is that, we go through these processes, and then the way it shows up in our life is how it shows up. It's just a matter of being aware and, oh, wow, I did that differently. And it's just kind of connecting like, oh, wow, doing that creative thing last week, I was able to organize my drawers more effectively today.
Yeah.
Yeah. It helps.
Like it
engaging with-
integrates everything. And deepen our fibers.
Yeah. And then it just shows up how it's going to show up for us each uniquely, individually, that we're, use the word, more functional in our day-to-day lives, and we're better problem solvers and better communicators, manage stress, all these different things.
Flourishing. Yeah. Helps us flourish.
This will tie in
Thank
beautifully
you.
to one of our upcoming community roundtables. We're going to jump off from that jumping point of talking about art and spirit to art therapy and your work. I'd love to have
let's hear more
conversations
about
with
that.
you. So this would be great.
And Peru? Oh my gosh, your
that's another
adventures in
whole experience.
Peru?
Yeah.
Working with the, All right, to be continued.
Yeah. Who do you want to pass the talking stick to?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to pull up the big screen. And who? Lena, you're lighting up for me.
Oh, yes.
Well, what you just said, and Lawson lit me up.
Thank you.
So, let's see, when I go out into the community, well, I've been working on this all my life, of getting out of my head and into my heart and not being judgmental. So, and then it kind of comes up and I really work on it, like when, you have a challenging experience and then you have an epiphany. So I had that epiphany again that, I really need to be in my heart and stay there. So when I'm out in public, I try and really be in my heart and stay there and send out, just model and send out love and not be judgmental. So that's my MO, like when I go to Target, I'm like, don't be judgmental, So, and then, and just and just talking to people, like when you talk to people you don't know, I call it planting seeds. You kind of judge like how much you can tell them, can I tell them, oh, I do ecstatic trance work, they're like, what? you
Always.
Or or you could start off saying, well, I work with a group of people who study alternate reality. Okay, that's an easier intro, So just monitoring how I present it. And then in my community, well, I have a pretty alternative community here. And well, I talk about whatever, we can be our authentic selves and talk about whatever. And I do drum journeys for friends. And just tell them stories about it. I have several friends that we share dreams and drum journey stories, and so just sharing my positive experiences in the area. So
And Hawaii has that energy built into it, that amount of that energy, that spirit, that it's not
It's
a
like
big leap.
Bali,
It's not a big
indigenous
leap
people
to
are
go.
there and vocal.
Yeah, it's not a big leap to go from everyday reality to talking about these kinds of topics, because it surrounds you.
Right. It's kind of like Sedona. It's a vortex, I
Yeah,
think,
it's a
where
vortex.
you have kindred souls.
Yeah.
Well, every sunset, there's people out on the beach clapping, like applauding the sun for setting and
Yeah.
putting on the show. I love that. Yeah.
I have one question. One of the things that's trending here on Maui is light language.
Yes.
So, and I just watched a video on YouTube last night that was really good. It was only 8 minutes. And so I'm just, we don't have to discuss it right now, but I just want to put it on the table, like okay, it's explained as soul language, but it sounds tonal, anyway. And then I have an artist friend who's writing it, and then, so I'm just wondering how that relates to all of this. I'll just put that out there.
Well, yeah, under the glossolalia,
The tonal and what Janet was saying about the long vowels and using
Yeah,
ourselves
yeah.
as instruments and being
it's a
conduits.
catch-all term now.
Yeah.
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 Okay, Lillian,
Yeah.
you pass the
Wonderful.
talking stick to
Thank
someone.
you.
Okay, let's
raise your hand
see.
if you have
Chris
something
Van
urgent.
Poel.
Okay, Chris, can you turn on your mic? See if she's.
I think it's on.
Yeah, you are.
Yep, trying to turn on my camera. It's I was just lost. We're in thunderstorms, so I keep having lightning around us. So if I pop out again, it's lightning.
You're on.
Lawson, thank you so much. I thought your presentation was awesome. And my short answer to your questions is I'm not sure. I've thought about a lot how we take this work with us every day and then how we get it out into the community. And I know that that's something that we at Mungie and with us at University of Missouri are working on right now. We're thinking about those things a lot. I'm sorry, I don't have a definitive answer. Sometimes I think just being who we are and just going and doing what we do naturally and with as much grace as we can muster up in all of our walks of life is probably the best we can do in the short term until we figure out where spirit guides us or however the mind or the dreams or the songs or the sounds move us to do what we need to do next. I personally am in a holding pattern, but that's just me. I've had a number of falls recently. But anyway, those are really great questions, Lawson, and one that I'm struggling with myself. So stay tuned. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'm looking forward to Janet's discussion. I did not know that about the God names, but makes kind of sense, a lot of sense. So I'm looking forward to upcoming Sunday. And then of course, Carolyn, I always love what you have to say. You're always one of my favorite people to hear wherever you are, Carolyn and Lelania and Linda. I don't know, all of y'all. I'm sorry, I'm reverting back to my Tex-Mex discussion. All y'all are awesome.
That's
Every one of you, I think I know across the border. So thank you all.
Well, and in sharing language, like Lee talked about, she said, I struggling with the concept of spirit and spirituality and the baggage that those terms carry, and how we being able to language these types of things that we're investigating, of course, that's your career. That's what you're working on, is trying to bring this area of research into a language that can be digested, maybe going into the future, not only from the field of anthropology and archaeology, but just terms of, from the field of academia in general, being able to talk about these things.
Or
We
how
talked
did
about
ancient
altered-
cultures leave their mark and
Yeah.
say something about it too?
Altered states
Yeah.
of consciousness has its baggage. Trance states has its baggage. There's all these different terms, and we struggle with this. And I've been having the same conversations for 30 years or whatever. It's like maybe we should call it this. You know? It's like-
Right.
One last question. So you study Mesoamerica shamanic cultures, and you're looking at, hey,
I-
Todd, you're
I study Casas Grandes, which is actually between Mesoamerica and the American Southwest. And I tend to gravitate more toward northern the US discussion, and with all across the whole world. So I'm in the no man land. I just want to kind of correct that.
I guess my question can apply to any culture at any era, but these cultures that held this kind of access to these liminal states, to these alternate realities as sacred, as central, as here, where we've got an institution and it's at the core of our society. How do you think that, well, they don't have to ask this question. How do you think that affects their daily life, their experience, compared to ours? What are we truly missing here?
I'm going to go back to something that Lawson said that you already know, that I think is really important when we think about these things. Whatever the shamans are, whatever they call themselves, him or her, or two spirit, whatever they are, they're part of their society at large, but they're within the society. And like with rituals, a lot of stuff's not done sacred. This sacred mundane dichotomy tends to not hold in a lot of traditional societies. And I think that being able to do whatever these rituals are and do it out in the middle of the street, the sound, the musics, are being able to hold a trance state. The late Michael Harner, I really like his discussion. He talks about these South American medicine men, shaman, whatever you want to call them. They'll sit there at night in a hut with everyone sleeping around them, with a Jew harp just going as they're doing their thing with everybody around them. And I think that that's something we've missed. I think is that a lot of this is within a society. And I think, I don't know if I'm right, and I don't even know if I'm wrong. I don't know, but it seems to me that maybe this duality is a false duality, and that we as anthropologists and maybe the world at large kind of not divide it so narrowly. And I think that maybe what the question Lawson's asking, maybe the reason I'm floundering for the answer is I don't hold those separate. And I think the most powerful trances when I have them is when the dog's barking that just got let in by my son, and when my kids are moving around and the world's going on, my neighbor is mowing the yard and somebody's cutting down the tree. If I'm going to ever do this practice, I live in a house with other sentient beings, around my house. So it's a very noisy environment. And I keep telling myself that's part of the ebbs and flows, right? And be able to do this practice and doing it with all the stuff going on around us is, I think, what is really magical about other groups on the planet. And I just wanted to kind of think about something a little different too. I read an article recently where the Upper Paleolithic, we think of Lost Cow and others, those halls of the bull or whatever, what archaeologists and acoustic people are finding, the stalagmites that come up and the stalactites that come down have painting on them. And when people hit them, the marked stones, they sound like the hoofs running in the caves. So this is a very dynamic sound environment, these caves, which is probably music and sound. And you know, as a music person, which is stalactites, stalagmites to hit, they're marked with paint, and they'll sound like the Hall of Bulls. But the caves with the tigers or the lion have no marking, and they waffle sound. They're deathly quiet.
And so were those animals, weren't they? They
Yes,
were
exactly.
stealthy predators.
Yeah. And so
Wow.
I think on the flip side of it, there's stuff that's as important when there's no sound or no image. Or I have a piece of jewelry not on me that a Zuni man made, and it has a hole in the middle. And the person said the most important piece of that jewelry is the hole. It's
Yes.
what's not seen and
The
what's
empty
not
space.
there that's really important. So there's no doubt that I think music's liminal. I don't know. And Lawson, I asked this question before I got booted from a lightning earlier, but it seems like that music has a liminal quality that really pulls us completely across these felicitous realms. And so there's something magical about that, that you go from that mystical person, your mind's over there, but at the same time, you can be your scientist doing your own thing. And that music has that quality of just pulling you across the various thresholds. And I don't know. I think because I'm deaf and I'm just got AI technology with my hearing, I'm able to hear now. So I don't do as well with music as some people. But my husband sits there listening to all kinds of music and he's able to write papers doing it. If I do that, I go into the music and I start typing whatever the words are, or the notes I hear. I was like, wait, I got derailed. I have to turn off the mute. But I know for him, it's just like watching him work. I go in and he's rocking out with the music blasting. But no, but music, it has all these qualities that we can say are that I love your graph you showed. And I like how you explained that really well. But it's almost like it comes inverted this way, but we can somehow
Three-dimensional.
bounce it around in that music quality that you can be at one point in that graph by each one of the corners. I don't know. I would say that there's something just really dynamic about
That makes sense.
music.
Oh, what beautiful insights. And I would say that if you're in a cave and you see the image on the cave wall and the sound is right there, the flickering of the torch that animates those paintings, they're finding that also. This is theater. This
Yes, it is
using
theater.
multiple senses. This is recreating that moment. And so it's holistic. And I think, oh my God, back to theater. And that having a foot in one world and a foot in the other. Yeah, we need to be stretched. To be stretched. And also, yeah, beautiful. I mean, I was so surprised in Australia to see in a little tiny patch of grass an Aboriginal elder just beating his clapping sticks together and singing. And here are the busy streets around him, and he's just sitting there, a patch of grass. And just as though the cosmos had opened up to him, and that's all he's seeing, not people stepping around him. Like, if we can have that kind of focus and have that kind of, that kind of entertaining both at once, then our mind is truly stretched and we're on full function.
Well, and I just want to add one. Somebody said about wrong music, Kelly, or something. Growing up in New Mexico near Mascalero Apache tribe and hearing the drums, what I still love to this day is how the drums move my entire body. I love it when the drums get going. I think Lawson probably knows this. But man, when those vibrations hit your body and you get moving and they flow through you and move through you. I mean, you can talk about the intellectual and the hearing, but man, that all over body drama. Could you imagine the drums in these caves or them drumming on these stalactites, stalagmites? And that would like move your whole body, right? And there's something, I was in marching band, believe it or not. And I remember there were a couple times where you have that synchronicity movement where you feel like you're one with everybody else. But for me, I think it was because I could sense those vibrations. I'm a hypersensitive person, so I can really feel vibrations but anyway, that's a thought. I don't know what people think about that, but I do love chanting and drumming for those reasons, for how it moves my body. And I would add to just real quick, one more last thought. Lawson, you got my brain blown up. I always love when you do that. You make my brain work different. But music is really important to our dance is really important in music, that I think it elicits something for an entire physiological shift. It's not just the mind, the mind or the thinking. It's like, I always feel like I have to dance. The hardest thing for what we do with this practice is letting our soul energy dance instead of our physical body. I'm like, no, hold still now. But, it does something with our whole being. And I like how it connects all the other whole beings into one. But that's another thought.
It's
that's
like
beautiful.
the dysfunction of the Western brain. We're trying to heal, get back. We're trying to come back. It can happen. Go ahead.
I remember one experience with the African healer, and she shows up in my trance state and she has a long stick and she taps my foot. Get dancing. You're not dancing enough. Get dancing. And
I hear
I'm
that all the time.
And also, you know, the Mesoamerican ball courts, those were fascinating to see and to think that I can go to a game, like a Mariners game or something, right? And the wave comes, right? And so everybody's like passing around the wave and yelling and screaming and singing. And it really captures you.
Mhm.
Or a concert,
Right.
or a rave concert, or
Right.
anything where we're doing something together in
Right.
this huge crowd, or this way people love to go to rock concerts, right? Or
Mhm.
Right.
I mean, if there's something captivating about that shared space. I love the shared space of this trans work too. So on
We
this
can
small
always
scale,
talk to Chris for hours at a time.
Yeah, we
We'd
can. We
Love
gotta move
talking
on.
with you. Chris, who do you want to
Thank you
choose to
all.
pass? Who do you want to pass the talking stick to?
Oh, that's a good one. I was gone, it felt like, for more than a few minutes, getting back on and rerouting my router. Who have we not heard from? Linda. I love talking to Linda. Linda, are you still here?
Yeah.
another guest from a Sunday, Linda Paladin.
A 4-hour talk. I loved it.
Yeah. She might have stepped busy.
Yeah, we do that. Let me see.
We'll circle back to you, Linda. Just
How about Dave? I know y'all mentioned Dave earlier, and every time I show up, Dave is always available and he's always got great things to say. And sometimes I'm like, I just had what Dave had happen. Wait a minute. Dave, hi.
Hey, Dave.
Hello, everybody. Okay, I've been thinking about what to do,
You
and
poet.
I thought I'd present 3 books.
Oh.
I can describe sometime how I find these things or how these things find me. But the first one is relevant to today. I'll hold up the title. It's backwards.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, for some reason, it's
Who's the author?
called Sound Medicine. It's Colruyt Choudhary, Chaudhary, MD.
Mhm.
It's called Sound Medicine. Of course, it's a pun. It's sound medicine. It's basic, and it is medicine for healing.
Mm-hmm.
What she's done is take it's like the flowering of the Vedic tradition, 5,000 years of Hindu practice and study, and made it practical. It has to do with tuning up your chakra system through sound. And well, I like practices. I like to do things that work. And this is one relevant to today's topic. Chanting.
Right.
The second one, I may have shown this before. Another vital book is called, is backwards, it's called The Finders. It's by Jeffrey
Martin.
Jeffrey Martin, if you can see it. And well, when I picked this up 3 or 4 years ago and read it, I mean, I had to wander out into the carport and out into the driveways and broke down weeping. Like finding this group that I'm honored to be able to participate in. I realize I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that's doing this.
Yeah.
And you'll find yourself in here, and when you do, you will be well. It's a workbook to identifying one's fundamental well-being.
Mm.
And well, the finders, you thought you were a seeker, but you may be a finder.
That's a good line. That's a good line.
Also, I see a note from Melania, Jonathan Goldman's
Yes.
work. I tuned into that too. And last but certainly not least, this is a recent acquisition. Again, I can't tell you how these things pop into my hands. This is called The Psychology of Totalitarianism. And you may have known it Matthias Desmet. It's backwards, but Matthias Desmet. He also, you can find him online, interview with him in Spain.
Yeah.
But if you want to know what's going on in the world today, and would like to see a meta view of what we're undergoing, this is illuminating.
Mm.
I mean, it's one of the scariest books. I mean, people go to horror movies to be entertained somehow. You don't need that. You want to see it for what it is. Here it
is.
See what
Oh.
we're truly up against.
Yeah.
And one last comment, this, our practice that we do here at Cuyahoga Institute is fundamental. This is the basis, this is the center, this is where it's at. So again,
Find your
I'm
core. Yeah.
delighted to be here in this energy field. So again, I'm filled with gratitude for everything that we're all are on. So that's it.
Well,
Thank
This
you.
community is a
Beautiful,
safe
beautiful.
container. Yeah,
Um,
indeed. Thank
go
you.
ahead and pick somebody on your list to pass the
Oh.
talking stick to.
How about
Thank you, Dave.
Mary Wolf?
Mary Wolf.
Mary Wolf. Yeah.
Oh.
Hi, thank you, Lawson. Really beautiful talk, and it brought up for me. I at one time was very, very ill, and I isolated. I lived way out in the desert, and every day I would go out and I would sing for an hour, just walking the dirt roads or the trails. And I tried to learn a song, like a popular song, from A to Z. I tried to learn and then sing those every time. And sometimes I would sing like songs for my mom and dad who had passed away. So I did that every day while I was healing for, I don't know, 5 years or something. And then when I moved into town, I didn't do it as much because people around. But at the beginning of COVID, I started going out in the parks and singing again. And I thought, man, is this going to annoy people or what? But I'd get these comments. I'd sing happy songs and I'd get these comments like, oh, thank you. And oh, that's so pretty. And so it was just, the power of song and music. It's very important. It's been very important in my life. And in terms of how I integrate the spirituality, I've always been very spiritual in different ways. But this practice, I think, has helped me be consistent in doing things, creative things, and things for myself. I have been able to do one piece of artwork every week for an entire, more than a year now and I never would have been able to do that before. So that's just, it's so important for me. And I may start writing again. I used to do that years ago. And I try to take things from the trance when, like I was told once to work with the fairies. So I try to do what the instructions I get in the trance, I try to do them. And I also, for my group of friends, I used to always make a ceremony for each pagan holiday, maybe walking a labyrinth or something. But now we usually do a trance just because because we're far apart and we just do a Zoom trance and then maybe play games afterwards or something.
Beautiful. And your weekly art, is that the Art and Spirit Wednesdays? Because you come up with these really exquisite, or do you do like big elaborate paintings?
The Art and Spirit is an extra. I do a painting or a drawing and complete it every week. It can be good, it can be marginal, it just has to be completed. And it's been over a year now when I've been able to do that.
Oh, fantastic.
How cool is that?
Yeah. Thank you, Mary.
That's really some beautiful me time, right? That's just the gift that we give ourselves to do those. And I really am struck by James Harrod's recipe for living. And this work was one of it, but he said, do something creative, like daily, weekly. set yourself an agenda to
Right.
give yourself that, because that flow state is so healing and juicy, and we reveal so much about ourselves, seeing what wants to flow through our creative expression.
Yeah,
Very
and
beautiful.
I'm just on a personal note, there's
Yeah.
the work of this institute can be pretty consuming. And so I've kind of made my new pact with myself that, I need to have me time, creative time.
This is music.
Well, like this morning, I got up at 4:30. I'm waking up very early because Arizona, if you don't get up early, it's going to get hot.
Well, you just want to fit so
Yeah.
much in your day too.
And
get
so
an early
I
start.
say, what's some little art project I can do? What's something I can do that has nothing to do with going to a computer,
Feel my
not
brain.
doing any emails, not doing any writing. I mean, just
Yeah.
see what I can find. And so that's really wonderful that you're doing those kinds of things, Mary, that you're giving yourself that space. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Who do you want to pass the talking stick to? We are getting short on time.
Kelly, would you like to speak?
Yeah, Kelly is here someplace. We see. There she is.
And Linda, also, if you come back to your,
Yeah.
or
You
if you got some
probably are
time.
like, yeah, let's ask Kelly if she wants to speak because she won't stop talking in the chat.
Who did we call?
Oh, Kelly, right
I
here.
think you called me.
fine. Yeah,
yeah.
please do.
Hi. I was just really loud in the chat the whole time, so I figured I probably should just talk and get it over with. So I've been thinking so much about this lately, and I feel like it's like time to get louder.
Yeah.
Like maybe we
Amen.
need to sing louder. Maybe we need to we're not reaching enough people, in my opinion. And I have gained so much from this being a part of this institute
Mm.
that it's just in so many different facets of my life, like my rock art, my artifacts I collect, my own abstract art that I'm creating, my music. It's just, I want that for everyone.
Mm.
And I also feel like if you all can delegate more, because you're only 2 people, and it's a lot. You guys do a lot, and it is very time consuming. And sometimes I feel like y'all might not be giving yourself enough me time. And because when you really look at all the things that y'all do, I'm just being real. And I just want y'all to have that time too. Like, you're doing these trances with us with the rattle, but you're playing the rattle. So I just feel like we need to reach each other more. Like, maybe we could even come up with something where we have a buddy in the membership for a month or 2. And we get to know that person. Maybe they don't know the keys that they have to bring to this institution, but maybe with having a buddy that you talk to twice a month and get to know, maybe we can find their key. Maybe we can help them find their key.
Yeah.
And then I've also
That's a
just been
nice
interested
idea.
in doing the children thing, like talking to
Mhm.
children more about this.
Great suggestions. Yeah.
Oh, I have to say, when you bring up children, this has come up a number of times. And Janet let's bring Janet on.
Well, Janet had to
Janet,
leave. She had
oh,
to
she
go.
did. Okay.
Yes, had to go.
Yeah, but Janet had this thought, well, why not a coloring book of these artifacts where children can color the artifacts? I was wanting to talk to you and Carolyn and Mary and people who have
Everybody's an
also
artist.
expressed this.
Yeah.
And why not? Yeah. And because kids focus and it was a great idea.
Mm.
And I
Getting
thought,
my own daughter's opinion about things. She's 9.
oh,
And
yeah.
sometimes her art is better than mine. She doesn't think about anything. She just draws it. And I'm looking up, a horse and the proportions, and, she's like, just draw it, mommy, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
she's just free. And I asked her, would you, during one of our trance meditations, and she knows what I do out here, when I'm out here,
Mhm.
if she would do that. And she said, well, yeah, I totally would, but I don't know if they would sit that long.
Yeah.
Well, that was
But-
Janet's point, that kids
But
wouldn't
she
sit
sat
that
here
long.
and did it with me, and just the things that she drew afterwards, I'm not allowed to show them, but because she said she has to copyright it and everything. She's hysterical. So
She's going to be a good
she
businesswoman.
really does sit here and draw too with me, and it's just
Yeah.
amazing because I taught preschool, I taught kids my whole life, and we have to reach the younger ones now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if it's small bits of time, a coloring book, something bigger. I'm thinking bigger. I built a teepee in our creek because I never saw any kids in the creek. And
Oh,
it's a fairy house now. They come put moss in it, they flowers. And so there's kids
That's great.
playing outside, and, you know, like your phone doesn't work there, things like that. And
Yeah.
just little camps you can have. I'm thinking in a bigger aspect of what we can do to connect with the kids more. And
Perfect.
I say teach kids, but really they teach me. They teach us.
Yeah,
Indeed.
You know, they teach us what we lost.
you're so smart.
Oh,
So, and
yeah.
I'm really, really so excited to be a part of this. I get really nervous when I get on here, and I talk really fast, and
Oh, you're
I'm always
charming.
nervous.
You're charming and brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's interesting. What if we had a committee to say, how can we introduce this to children or
Yeah.
kids of all ages?
We have to experiment
And
with people who
Janet
have
brought
children.
that up, and she said,
Yeah.
why not a coloring book? She said exactly what you said. And she should come back and speak. We should have this, like, at some point, have a
Yeah.
discussion
Mhm.
where she's present. But why not have a coloring book of artifacts or people holding a pot? Kids can do this, you know,
Mhm.
for a few minutes. Kids, this is the
They
posture.
can.
Kids can, this is the healing posture. This is beautiful. And, or even appreciating ancient art. Because I'm afraid that in the next generations, and I get being mobile, I would be too, if I were 20, I would be mobile. I wouldn't have a lot of possessions. I would want to go out and play with the world. I would say it's, you know, time for exploration. I had that. I did that. But that the artifacts of yesterday are not meaningful to the kids of tomorrow
Yeah.
or the adults of tomorrow. And how do we preserve this? How do we integrate this? How
Right.
do we honor some of this information that's really precious, just simply in an artifact that shows a body? And how do we integrate it?
There's-
Or even if you're drawing it or coloring it,
Right.
aren't you taking that in some way? Aren't
Sure.
that your mirror neurons doing something with that? Aren't you grokking it? Would it be interesting to kids? I thought it was interesting. Also, our friend Shelley in Australia, got to get her in this as well. She's describing, well, why not have children create masks that are meaningful about an element of nature? And then there's Zoe Weil, who actually has done that and has a YouTube talk on it. Kids creating a mask and speaking on behalf of the ocean, or speaking on behalf of rainbows,
That's
or
beautiful.
speaking on behalf of the forest or the trees,
Right.
you know, to help build a bridge and honor. They're doing this anyway. Why not honor it and make it an event
Right.
where adults and children commune on that?
Right. I think there's lots of
vibrant activity.
possibilities that we could actually benefit from in this institute if we
Uh,
like really put some things together. And I'm
Yeah.
here.
We're
I'm
just
here. We're
holding up a
also
tent
busy, but
pole. I
I'm
just want to
here.
put out the invitation. Thank you, Kelly. We're just holding up a tent pole and inviting people to come and play and bring your skills, bring your ideas, bring your energy. All we can do is hold up a tent pole and go, come. Where do you want to take this work?
Well, and we
Let's
have
support you in doing that. So
yeah, good
yeah,
points. All of these
appreciate you
good
stepping
points.
up. Thank you.
And
Beautiful.
the practice of the postures obviously would be involving movement for children. We can still
Oh,
hold a
yeah.
posture and then have the drumming and we can go in a circle. We can create ritual for children that's appropriate to children. It doesn't have to
Well,
be
and people
a
who know
static posture.
kids, yeah, we've never had kids, so I don't know, but
But kids
people
move.
who work
I
with
taught-
children.
I taught walking
And
meditation.
even
to
books,
children.
like Laura said, the children's books with
Right.
with art that they've created. How cool would it be to have children doing this kind of work and using their imagination, listening to sound some weeks, not
Yeah.
listening to sound, like making art after they do whatever their journal experience is,
Beautiful.
whatever
Yeah.
their expression is afterwards. We could put all those in a book, and we could put ours in a book, and
I love
we could
the-
reach a bigger audience.
The best part of what you're saying
you,
is you
Kelly.
keep saying the word we. I love the fact that you feel it's your institute. We need to do this and we could be thinking about that. I love you starting off the sentences with the word we. And I want more of that from
Thank
all of
you.
you. That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Thank you.
I
And
appreciate it. Love it.
don't,
Thank you, Kelly.
I want to
Thank
say, because I know Kelly brings forth a lot of inspiration and others do too. You know, so well, they didn't follow through. Paul and Laura never called me back. Just please take initiative to just get what's happening, guys. I haven't heard from you, and I really want to do this project
Don't
for
let it be
children.
a threshold.
I
you're
just
already
keep
well
bugging
for it.
people until they answer
Yeah.
me. That's what I do.
Yeah,
My
just keep
feelings never get hurt.
pester. Be like a mosquito. All right.
Thank you
Kit, you
so
want to, we
much.
have time for another person before you
Well,
log
who
off?
hasn't talked?
Oh, I know who,
Yeah.
we were gonna have Linda Paladin, but her wasn't on at the time. Linda, do you want to share a little bit? Catching you off guard? She's laughing at me. Your mic's turned off though, still. Yeah.
Okay.
And
And who
talking.
else? Who else? We
Well,
don't hear
let's,
from
we
everybody.
don't. we
All
don't
right,
have
I'm
time
not
to
sure.
let
Go ahead, do your thing.
Linda turn on her thing.
Yeah.
There we are.
Okay.
There you are.
Yeah, here I am. Another aspect of sound and music is the toning. And I was just, wondering what our speaker would have to say about that. I mean, when you hear a conch shell and the sound that comes from it,
Yeah,
it just goes right through you.
absolutely.
And, then I think of also Pat Sung and the way that she does toning. And so we do have some many opportunities and ways to express even that part of the impact of sound on the spirit. I'm so glad that we did focus on how do you integrate the the experience with real life. And that's something that is still difficult for me. It's like a dream, and I mean, you have trouble figuring out your dreams. And so then here you are with this vision that you cooked up. And I also feel that there's a need to respect and trust the vision.
Yes.
Because it's really easy for me to discount it. I just made it up, and I've collected, I created a list of symbols that reoccur. And yeah, right. I mean, okay, here it is again. It may have a different theme or something, but it's fun with that. When I was hearing about the children's coloring book, and I thought of the adult coloring book, and then I thought about creating a Cuyamonga coloring book. And it would be where we would contribute a symbol from our and you would, outline that and put that on a page, but most often, the whole idea of drawing, singing, movement, all of that stuff, the basis still is the vision that we have. And, the challenge with children would be, to me, for adults and children to be present with each other. So you could model, you could play, and darn it, it's the children that we need to learn from. Their wisdom is a gift.
Yeah. Wow.
Wonderful.
Well, I think we have an initiative here.
Yeah.
Who wants to start the committee? Let's start the committee and brainstorm this. Yeah.
Beautiful. Linda, I appreciate that.
Wise
Beautiful,
words.
beautiful wisdom.
I appreciate from Kelly to Linda to everybody. I mean, so
Chris
many
to-
wise words spoken here with everybody.
Yeah. We kind of have run out of time, but maybe final
Thank you,
thoughts
Linda.
about, let me see who I have here.
We have to have Lawson say.
Oh yeah,
the
that's
final word,
true.
too.
That's a good point.
Yep.
And
Who
yeah.
hasn't spoken yet?
Well, let me see at the top of the list, and Donovan hasn't spoken, and going down the list. Some people, of course, are logging off because they've run out of time.
Yep.
And I think
We've come
Tracy
to the end of our 2
Donovan
hours.
hasn't spoken.
So
Yeah.
so
If
if
you
you're-
want to, if either one of you want to raise your hand, so I know that you're still here and you want to talk, that would be great.
yes, leave your emails if you wish.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you write to us also, we'll send out a mass email.
Yeah, yeah.
and just say, if you're interested, let's
Let's get
talk about
started
it.
on this
That
part.
sounds like a
Okay,
fun project.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm gonna bring Lawson back up on the screen here and say thank you. There he is. And
So Lawson, did you collect some answers that weren't those insightful? Oh
that
my
was great.
gosh.
What a journey.
Absolutely, yeah. That question, I think I was trying to make it as much for everybody else as much for me, but those are some really great answers.
Yeah,
And I appreciate all the nice things everybody said.
yeah. Well, you deserve it. You absolutely
Um,
deserve it.
Yeah.
I found, as I mentioned, one of these, and if I could play us
Yes.
out, I would.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. So this is one of the sounds from Bali that I love so much. And if you can't hear something, just cut me off. Let me know. I'm trying to play the right distance away from the screen.
Mhm.
Oh, beautiful. You know, I love that flutes are 40,000-year-old, made from bird bones, but
Uh-huh.
you have to consider they were probably made of wood and reeds as well that didn't survive. So how far back these
Very-
drums and rattles and flutes go?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been with us from the get-go.
Well, we actually did an interview back in the radio show days with
Yeah,
a gentleman on the bone flute, and he actually had a
reproduction.
reproduction he played for us on the air.
And he said it was in the pentatonic scale
Bob.
that we all
What was the guy's name?
love. But let's say
Okay.
goodbye and
Well,
thank you. This was so fun today.
Well, here it is, Bob Fink. I found it on the website, but anyway. So if you,
Oh, 45,000-year-old
Yeah.
Neanderthal flute. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
yeah. So I'll just real quickly, since I went through the work of pulling that up, I'll go like this and go, there it is. See? Yeah.
Did you post that?
Yeah, it's on our website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just put in Bob Fink and you'll find it. You hit play, you'll get to hear the sounds and all of that. So really cool, Lawson. You've really been an inspiration today. And everything has gone way beyond we could have possibly dreamed, having all of your contributions. And everybody had so much to contribute and such powerful insights and professions and research and publications and everything else. So
Well, I just want to say, if you want to get to know, Carolyn Pokris had an interview with Bernie Bateman on synchronicities.
oh yeah.
And Lawson has a couple of Sunday interviews. Chris and her husband, Todd, have many interviews and podcasts. Linda Paladin has, oh man, two-hour segments on the work of her husband, David, his spirit art, going into beta and theta, beautiful retrospective. Let's see, who else did we hear from? Janet Rudolph is coming next week.
And-
So
Yeah, Rudolph, that's great.
yeah, and we want to hear from Lee about intermodal
Art therapy
liminal spaces, art therapy.
and how to pronounce
Yeah.
it correctly. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, on the fly here.
Good.
Oh,
Oh, wonderful. I know each one of you, everybody's a presenter here. Everybody's a teacher. Everybody has something to add.
we just not only learn from the children, but we learn from one another. So much. And that's kind of the whole point of these discussions.
And
Just compare
remember, we
notes
will
along the
continue
way.
to investigate why Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall. We're not quite sure yet, but we'll get back to you.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Awesome.
dear.
All right, brother. Let me have everybody say thank you. Let me everybody turn on their
Thank you to
mics.
all.
Thank you, Lawson.
Thank you, Lawson.
So
Thank you.
fabulous, so
Thank one of you
interesting.
as well. Yeah, yeah.